Okay, now we're ready to go into step 3. This, once again, I mentioned this is graphite wash that I'm using. So I penciled in my sketch. I went from the sketch phase to blocking in my shadows. And now with the brush, I'm just going to soften some of those shadows areas by just adding some water, some nice wash marks. If you have a branch in a tree, just move that branch up through the tree, and then just create some nice organic loose shapes to indicate the shadow area of the tree. Keeping in mind always that you can go back into these areas with water or a pencil later. So right now I'm just using the wash to indicate shadow areas to bring the viewer in and through the drawing. So nice large tree in the foreground. Shadow cuts across the driveway, and there's another tree that the canopies join. As we get up to the top of the tree, you're going to indicate some shadow areas, but fewer and further between, maybe lighter. I still have my farmhouse back here, which I'll go in and restate later. But for now, just putting in fields of value to indicate those shadows that I wanted to state. We're moving up this hill comes down and winds. Just restating some nice shadow areas, keeping it loose. Bush area, we had a nice round full tree. Once again, since this is a pattern motif, my goal is to keep the pattern of round shapes. I have a nice fence shape that's here. It's just a combination of the round shapes contrasting with some more linear shapes. Brush up front here. I could just put some wildflowers in the front, maybe indicate just a soft value that there's a change. Okay, then coming right behind this tree, this is where we really have a nice dark shadow, where this tree line and these shadow areas are really just moving into this valley area where this little farmhouse is. I'm going in with some water and really just stating this nice diagonal shape, this cropping of trees here. It's a nice shadow shape leading down into this valley. And they're dotted up along the hill. As you do this, think of your large shapes and your small shapes. Think of your big and your small shapes. Nice to keep some white edges there. You could pick up, if you have to, get rid of some color. Just use your brush. Sure you keep some of those lighter areas in there. Here we have another tree line. I don't want to get as dark up here because I'm thinking of atmospheric perspective. Our tree shapes are smaller. They're further back. Be nice to keep it gray. These shapes a little softer in tone. Just going to go with a light wash back here to indicate it's just a soft mountain range in here. So we want to keep our dark values in the foreground and our light values in the background. Here we have some brush. Just going to indicate that brush lightly and let some more value down into the foreground. Okay, at this point, you can go back in with your graphite pencil and restate some of your darker values. So right here we've got a nice dark value right here behind the tree. It's the shadow area underneath other canopies. There we go. And if you have a tree in the foreground that's catching the sun, you can darken the background to give that sense of, to help the foreground to come forward. Here again, you can go in with your pencil and restate some of your shapes. If the paper is still wet, I'm using a 140-pound watercolor paper. If your paper is still wet, you can just go in with your graphite pencil. It will pick up some of that water. So you can go in and sketch in some areas. You'll get some nice sketch marks for your mid-tone area, mid-tone range. You decide what you want to be, what values dark, what values are going to be mid-tone. There we go. You could once again restate some of these shapes to help to make sure that they're organic. I want to keep these shapes looking round, tree-like, shrub-like, bush-like. Nice thing about the graphite pencil is that you can layer, go back in and layer. Have a nice round shape right here of a bush. Once again, this is the pattern composition. So just creating a pattern of trees and bushes along a hillside. And this comes and actually connects to the house. So right about here we have our farmhouse. Just put it in behind this tree in the foreground. Let's do a little sketch. Angle of the roof. If you have something that's detailed, then you can just go in and put those details in later. Keeping in mind, of course, it's a sketch. So underneath the roof, we have a solid patio and shadow. And it's a shape that comes off of the roof, an upstairs room. Nice to have just graphic shapes in contrast with your organic shapes in the background. Once again, this is a perspective, 2-point perspective on this farmhouse. Just a little indication. For detail work, you can go in with your small round brush to refine any details that you might want to give a harder edge to. So it's just the top of the farmhouse. They have a pitched roof that recedes to the back. And later I can go in, wipe out some of that color. If you have areas where it got a little bit too dark, you could just go in with your brush, wet it, just wipe out some of the sun hitting the top of the roof, and keep it a little bit lighter on top. That's the top of the farmhouse. You could just restate the pitch of the roof. Over and down. Restate some of the branches in the tree, some of these foreground leaf shapes. Just put a little bit more graphite in, where you're going to get a little bit more texture in your foreground. Once again, you would use this round detail brush will allow you to put in a little bit more detail for this tree in the foreground. If you want a little bit more texture. Once again, layering value on top of value. A nice branch coming out here in the shadow area into some shrubbery. So you're just, with your pencil, you're just rubbing away, making some organic leaf shapes, and allow some light to fall through. You want some of the light coming from the background in there. So once again, with this small pointed round brush, can go in, I think it's a number 2, small number 2 round brush, just going in and putting in a little bit of detail where you might have some of those leaf shapes. Making sure those bright lights can pop through. That'll bring your contrast into the foreground. Okay, and then you go back and forth with that. Keeping in mind this is a sketch, so you're thinking about what do I want to emphasize. In this particular sketch, I love this beautiful tree in the foreground with some branches going off. So maybe I'd give the tree in the foreground some detail. Getting some detail in the shadow area here. Just keeping it rough, light, organic strokes. Here we have our farmhouse. This leading into the farmhouse. Off of the farmhouse, there's a fenced area. Just put a little texture. Here, just pencil marks. You don't want to lose all your pencil marks. So going along, there's another fence that goes back here. Decide, where do you want your pencil marks? Where do you want your washes? Then maybe just a little bit more detail in the leaves of the tree. At this point, you're checking your dark values with your mid-tone values. That's really going to help these trees feel organic. Not like just a big solid blob, but you can really if you go from your dark shadow area, stay very organic, to your mid-tone area, and then letting some of that light creep through. That will really give you the sense that this is a tree. And then keeping your shadows light on the ground.